because we are heading towards our first discussion in this session, the CxO Fireside Chat on Customer Experience Index CEI Study 2024. And in this discussion, one of our panelists, Mr. Shailesh Narayanan, Country Head, Frost & Sullivan, is already with us on the stage. Just bear with us, sir, as I'm going to announce the other panelists who will be joining us for this discussion. We'll have Mr. Jan Bures, Executive Director, Sales, Marketing and Digital, Skoda Auto Volkswagen India Private Limited. Mr. Nalinikant Golagunta, CEO, Automotive Division, Mahindra & Mahindra Limited. Mr. Hardeep Singh Brar, Senior VP and Head of Marketing and Sales, Kia India Private Limited. And for this session, it will be moderated by Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, former Chairman, FADA Academy and Research. Gentlemen, please join us on stage. We are just about preparing the stage for the CxO Fireside Chat on Customer Experience Index, or the CEI Study 2024. You just had a glimpse of the entire exercise through the presentation that Mr. Narayanan gave. And now all our esteemed panelists will be discussing all the details on the study during this highly informative and engaging session that we have lined up for you this afternoon. Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, I'm going to hand it over to you, sir.
So good afternoon, everybody. I know it's tough to get the attention just after the lunch, but because this is a historic moment for us, this is the first time FADA has come in such a syndicated study where we had done a customer index survey, customer experience index, and we had covered some 8365 physical surveys done on ground. Like Shailesh has already told you, they were all blind surveys, and it took a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. So hope this panel discussion shares some insight to you also how things are, and you've already seen the results. Kia has been the winner, so I'll start the question with Kia. Mr. Brar first. So, sir, understanding customer pain points and moment of truth is key to improving the customer journey. How are OEM and especially Kia using data analytics, customer journey mapping, and other methodology to identify these critical points and helping dealer to optimize the overall customer experience?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, first of all, and I think I must compliment FADA and Frost & Sullivan for this first edition of Customer Experience. And we are, of course, thrilled to win the first one, and I think this is the first time any OEM has won both sales and after sales, so we are very, very happy to receive the award. And we would like to thank our dealer partners because they are the ones who really deliver on our behalf, and I think they are the face of the organization. Any Kia dealers here? Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well done. Thank you. So coming to the point, now, usually we look at two aspects of business. One is sales and other is after sales. And usually these are the customers who are already your customers. But we brought in another angle to it, which is called a pre-sales satisfaction index. So out of the 100 customers that come to you, about 15 to 20% really get converted and they are your consumers eventually. But 80% of the consumers actually go out. They don't buy cars from you. So we decided, let's start talking to this 80% of the consumers. Why didn't they buy a car from us? And we created this index, which is pre-sales satisfaction index, to understand from them why they have not really bought car from us. And we are doing that part of survey as well, which of course is not captured here. But I think that is also very critical to understand what is really happening to them. Now, coming to the question, which is about data analytics, I think it's very crucial because I think we are throwing so much of data. And, so for example, we have after-sales index, we have sales index, and pre-sales index. Each one of them have about 6 parameters on which we actually rate, we ask the consumer that how do you rate us? So for example, to give you an example, in terms of sales, we ask them how's the KEC behavior, how was your showroom experience, how was your test drive experience, so on and so forth. And every dealer, so you have data based on every city, you have data for every dealer, you have data at the state level, you have data at a region level, you have data at the national level. So I think data analytics is the most important thing because that's what you are capturing. How do you really translate this capturing of data into actual execution is the key. Now, a consumer, I just, since I had an hour, I went to the CP showroom we had. So I found out at that dealership that, you know, they have, on the 6 parameters which are there, as I mentioned, the showroom experience, the sales executive experience, the test drive experience, so on and so forth, the average was coming out as 921, which was a great score. But when I looked at, and eventually you ask a customer, okay, you said X, Y, Z for every parameter, and the weighted average is 921. And when I look at the overall satisfaction, which is one final question to the customer, okay, you said this about test drive, this about consultant, tell me how's your overall satisfaction? And the score was 850, right? Which means there's a huge gap when you start taking the weighted average versus the overall satisfaction. And then you find there is a huge gap. But when I looked at another showroom of theirs, they have another showroom in Gurgaon, there the weighted average was 963, and the overall satisfaction is also 962, which means it's in sync, which means overall satisfaction and the weighted average is in sync. So we need to see how the weightages are, how the weighted averages, how the overall satisfaction. I think, you know, there is so much of data which is there, but we need to finally translate this data into action. That is the most critical point. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brar. I'll go to Mr. Yan. So basically, from our survey, what we could find that customer was more, gave priority more to convenience and reach than the over big and expensive dealership infrastructure. Not specific to you, but even specific to you also. How should the OEMs adapt to this about the customer's expectation? And there are some OEMs who talk about 100-foot showrooms, some talk about 6,000 square foot showroom and so many display, whereas the customer is wanting more towards the convenience and reach. What should be the way forward?
Many thanks for that question, and good afternoon to everyone. And before I answer that question, many thanks to FADA for the invitation, and many thanks to FADA as well for running this survey. And congratulations to Kia. And I see that he is an ex-Volkswagen employee, which makes us proud that he learned the lesson well and introduced everything everything he learned at Volkswagen and now at Kia. Now my second question would be, and that is a request to all Audi dealers who are here today, please raise your hands. No Audi franchise dealers? There's 1, 2, are there more? Many thanks to what you guys have done, and on behalf of the entire Audi network, because to perform at a level as you have, to have a #1 rank in the premium segment, that is something that I want to congratulate you, and I will take that spirit with me back home, and I will share that also with the Audi team in Mumbai. So having said that, what is keeping people away from entering dealerships, from entering workshop stations, from engaging with us, right? And the answer to that is simple as well as it is difficult, because the action then is to be done on a daily basis. People are afraid of big buildings. People are afraid of authorities. People are afraid of being ripped off because they feel that whatever is on the service bill is what I'm paying in order for maintaining and making that guy rich, maintaining the building and making the guy rich, who sells me that service. However, on the other hand, we have seen that also in that FADA study, Customers nowadays have certain expectations, and they don't want to be treated, like in a backyard any longer. So you have to find the middle way, and you have to also offer then customers what it is that they want. Every market is different, so markets and market managers have to find their own approach to that. However, all that has to be in line with the CI/CD guidelines of the manufacturers, right? And we want the brand experience. Otherwise, we would not be scoring with Audi #1. We want the brand experience here emphasized as well. A couple of things, practical things. Ease of making an appointment. In other words, online, make online appointments possible. Then the service core processes that entail a cost estimate, that entail that the customer is being greeted and is explained the repairs that are to be done. And with that, you already establish a certain level of trust with the customer, and then he sees that he is maybe not ripped off, and all that what is being highlighted is really necessary. And then the other thing that I found in the study was the follow-up. So they want to have also a follow-up after the service was done. And if the service was not done right, then give me a way where I can call and where I can complain. All these things are to be done and are to be implemented in order then to have the customer, when he comes next to the workshop or showroom, to have him convinced that there is no reason to be afraid of entering, of engaging with the dealer. So that would be my answer. Be human. Simply, do what you think is right to be done, and follow up with people, and always put yourself into the shoes of the customer, and act as if you are being treated by yourself. That would be my answer.
Thanks, boss.
Kesh, if I may add a couple of points.
Yeah, please, sir, please.
You mentioned the word infrastructure, and I know it's something which is very sensitive topic for dealers at some level. But I do want to make a distinction between digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure, because sometimes we have a very traditional view that when we say infrastructure is just physical. I think increasingly customers are looking for zero-touch approach until they choose to come into a dealership to that extent. So the digital infrastructure, which not only the OEM, but even the dealer needs to build to serve the customer, is critically important as we think about it. So I think it's important for us to think through infrastructure in both those angles, both physical and digital. And the second thing is different formats. I think we need to be a lot more creative in thinking through how do we reach the customer in terms of the retail formats that we have or the service formats that we have. And several of the OEMs have innovated there, but really the point is it's not about one size fits all. We need to have probably 3, 4, 5 different formats as we start to go into tier 2 towns or even some of the congested parts of the urban areas as well. So I just wanted to add that point as well, Venkash Bhai.
So thanks, boss. I was coming back to you only. This is not a question from a Mahindra dealer to a Mahindra CEO. This has come up in this topic is that, so basically, as you're talking about digital, what we have seen, the number of touch points physical increases, you can say the similar kind of experience reduces. So what are OEMs doing that how to reduce in sales and after sales support things which are more in customer's hand and physical touch point are reduced and their experience is improved with that? What is Mahindra or what are other OEMs doing? Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Let me just see at the end of the day, most of the customers want to have as much of the interactions to be self-service to start with. And from a service perspective, honestly, as little of the touch point as they have, unless it's a scheduled service to that extent, right? Just a couple of points we need to look at, and this will increasingly become more relevant as we get into the world where it's software on wheels to that extent, right? A lot of what we put out in our vehicles today as an OEM is broadly software controlled and software tuned to that extent. So unless there's an actual physical part which needs to be replaced or synchronized for, there's really no reason for a customer to show up at a showroom, provided we're able to provide most of those updates over the air. Right? If you see Mahindra, and this is true of most of us now, a lot of our cars are largely connected cars. And a lot of times that is driven from an infotainment perspective, from giving connectivity to the customers. But really the same infrastructure that we're putting in the vehicles can be used for over-the-air updates. Right? Now close to 40% of our vehicles which we're putting it out are actually vehicles which can be largely updated over the air. You don't need to come into the showroom. Right? So the paradigm here is not to think that you want to reduce the number of touch points. You want to do it in a way that the touch point is invisible to the customer. And that's what happens with your phones today, right? You once in a while get a thing saying that, oh, this app needs to be updated. In fact, you can even automate that process. So the touch points are happening. You just are not aware there's a touch point which has happened between you and the OEM to that extent, right? I think that's the one paradigm we need to rethink about. And the second point, like you said, eventually, if the customer does show up at the touch point, how do you make the process as seamless as possible and as predictable and reliable as possible? That's the critical piece, and that's where the journey which Hardeep talked about comes into play, being very, very thoughtful about the journey the customer is going through and making sure that it's a journey they walk away with a lot of delight and joy.
Thank you. Shailesh, coming to you. Once FN has just done a beautiful job, thanks to you, Priya, Siddharth, and people who are not here today in the hall. So with customer centricity becoming a key differentiator in today's auto world, how does an unbiased end-to-end customer experience survey conducted by your team provide deeper value compared to traditional in-house feedback mechanisms, or what we have knowledge of, a lot of OEMs are doing their proper proprietary surveys and all that. Why your survey is better than what they are working on?
Sure, thank you. Pretty long question. I will try to answer it as simple and clear as possible. I know it is an interesting journey that we went through when we did this study. But before I talk about the study, I wanted to just acknowledge the panelists who are present over here representing different brands. I'm happy to hear and know that everybody talked about what they want to do from their customer perspective, whether it be from a technology perspective, whether it be from the data that they gather, whether it from the experience that they want to. Everybody is talking about how do I enrich my customer? How do I focus on my customer? How do I live with my customer who is using my car for a period of time? And the whole objective of the study was from that perspective. Not just look at the purchase process, not just look at the product. I mean, their products are getting reviewed from day in and day out from various places. The purchase process or the sales process that any customer goes through, the OEMs, the brands are themselves tracking it in terms of what it is. They send out feedbacks, they collect feedback forms. But each of these activities, and so is the after sales. In some case, there are after sales reminders that come saying that you're happy. But is there a single mechanism that can help the brands understand the overall customer experience? Is the journey that Frost and Sullivan got the opportunity to work on this with FADA support, FADA support, and that's where we really came in to bring this. So the differentiator that we are going to bring across on table in simple is not just one process. This is not going to remove out any of the existing process that you do, but it is going to give you another unbiased lens done by a third party who has no relationship to your data, who has got no influence to the data, who does not pick up any data either from the brand or from the dealer, but goes out into the market, does a random sampling, picking up on certain basic data that we have identified, and provides you customer feedback. This is the first in the series that could probably the industry could witness, and I feel this is where the core differentiator will come for you to help you create that value proposition that you want to put in place for being a lot more customer-centric brand with focus on your customer.
You want to add something yet?
Yes, I agree. I agree, because you cannot simply apply one process to all. That has to be differentiated. And then one more thing, which I forgot to mention when I spoke first. We must not forget women. We have Gariba. Gariba, unfortunately, she left. She is one of our Volkswagen dealers in Delhi. And she runs one store with female sales force and service force only. And that is very successful. So we must not forget about that women in the service process particular do pose, skills that men don't have. With both genders, when a woman treats a man, respectfully, and vice versa, then it works wonder. And that is what I meant when I said before, which also sort of correlates with what you said, that you cannot have, one process for all. The team that you have, in your dealerships is what makes the difference. And when you pay your team right and when you train your team right, then they will do what is right for the customer as well. So, in other words, when you find the right talent and when you treat the talent the right way, then they will also make sure that the human factor is always considered, and that they are not selling simply stuff, and that they are not simply fulfilling a job, because they are then doing what they are doing because it is their commitment to you as the employer, and they are not making it just for earning the bread, of course, for that reason as well, but they are also investing themselves into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming to Brarsa, to you. Kia is now a mass product and now present in tier 2, tier 3 town dealerships also. But while doing the survey, not specific to Kia, but while doing the survey, we found out that the urban markets or the semi-urban markets are giving better experience in service as compared to the tier 2, tier 3 towns. So tier 1 and metros are giving better service than tier 2 and tier 3 town. Could be their perception that they feel that their urban friends are getting more better service, or could be just as an actual. We can't judge that because in the survey we came out the report. So how do you think it can be addressed, or what should be done, or do you feel is it actually a difference, or it's just a perception, or what has to be done?
So firstly, we have to take customers on the face value. You cannot deny what they have mentioned. So I think we need to put our minds together why it has happened. The first thing that comes to my mind is, I think in metros, the competition is far more intense, right, than probably tier 2 and tier 3. To give you an example, I think for a mass market brand, you will have in excess of 10 to 15 showrooms, whereas in tier 2 and tier 3, it would be 3, 4 setups. So I think the competition is more intense here. Number two, I feel the quality of manpower that you get in metros are relatively better. Of course, the attrition level is higher. So I would say people in the workshop, they would have multiple exposures over their life cycle. You move from brand A to brand B to brand C to brand D probably. So that is the second thing that I can think of why metro markets would be better than tier 2 and tier 3. But frankly, if you had asked me without giving me this information, I wouldn't have said that this would be different, because this one big problem that I'm seeing in metro markets is the capacity utilization is busting on its seams. I think I can see most of our dealers, and also the space is a big constraint. So dealers in metro try to milk the capacity to the maximum possible extent. I can see the capacity is 110, 120, 125%. Then they put more technician, they extend working hours till you really, because real estate is very, very expensive in metro towns. So to open the next workshop, you think twice, because a workshop would cost in metro towns anywhere between 10 to 15 lakhs. And before making that investment, you want to milk your existing infrastructure more. So from that perspective, if you ask me, I would have said tier 2 and tier 3 would have better satisfaction because of this. And you will see a lot of cars parked all across. Whereas tier 2 and 3, they have larger infrastructure. So their overall workflow is relatively better. But as I said, we have to take customers on the face value and try to see why it is happening. And those are the two reasons which I mentioned came to my mind why it should be better than tier 1 versus tier 2 and tier 3.
So, Mr. If it is right, whatever the survey is saying, I don't know, you will all have to see the reports in detail to come up. This is what has come up as a summary. How should OEMs come up with some strategy to change this or help dealers change this. It could be a perception, it could be right. But this is what has thrown out of the survey result.
Yeah. So I think Hardeep touched upon it as well. It's the quality of the talent and manpower and the paucity of talent you have in some of the tier 2, tier 3 towns, which causes a little bit of this challenge. For me, I have a bit of a benefit of this perspective coming from healthcare. We have a very similar issue in healthcare when I was there as well. And really the only way you can approach this is through operational excellence in a few areas to that extent. One is for each one of the jobs and what we're putting there should be a very, very strong SOP put in place. And there should be a very strong training and an ongoing rolling training which has to be put in place to make sure that happens. The challenge we have is the attrition is quite high because there's a small amount of talent. The talent keeps getting poached between the different teams. So therefore, you might do regular trainings, but what happens is that if you're not doing on a rolling basis, you're always going to be at a point where 30-40% of the team is not fully trained up. So SOP and make the trainings go up. I think the second piece is we got to do a lot more remote diagnosis. And that is something Mahindra is working very closely on. We have something called an RVD, which is Remote Vehicle Diagnostics tool, which we put out there, so that you take away a lot of the expertise load away from the folks who are in the tier 2, tier 3 towns. And a lot of that is done remotely, centrally, and then we're able to help them so that the experience becomes uniform from an expertise perspective as well.
So let me add 2 more points. I was thinking aloud what else could be there. 2 more things that I can think of. Firstly, I think the OEM visits to the metro markets is higher versus tier 2 and tier 3. So for example, you have regional offices in every metro market. Yeah. So, you would tend to visit far more often than probably you will visit the upcountry market. That is one. And of course, when you have more interaction, more discussion, and if your customer satisfaction goes down in a metro market, you are dead. You cannot recover it because your volumes are so high. So I think the focus is very high and the interaction levels are very high. The second thing that I can think of is the pick and drop in metro markets is far higher than tier 2 and tier 3. So the metro customer does not have enough time. He doesn't get into too many nitty-gritties. You pick my car, you drop it, the car should be clean, you give me the estimate, take the money, don't bother too much. Whereas I think the customer in tier 2 and tier 3, the walk-ins are far higher. In fact, the tier 2 and tier 3 customer also wants to go to the workshop and check how the work is happening on the ground, right? Versus a tier 1 customer. Tier 1 customer is not concerned. And hence the pick and drop is lower in tier 2 and tier 3, and customer is more available, and when he's there, he's more critical. So I think these are 2 points that I can add to the 2 points that I mentioned earlier.
But I feel that's the major problem what we handle when tier 2, tier 3 town, the customer is sitting for 3-4 hours. And whatever we want to hide from him about the product issues or how we are replacing a wire, we are opening all full dashboard. And that is where he starts that my vehicle is just 5,000 kilometers or 500 kilometers. So how to solve that then? Because it's not basically a issue what dealer can think of solving on his own. So somewhere we need those.
So I think we started this initiative of live coverage. So why does customer want to sit? Because sometimes customer doesn't trust the dealership, right? And I don't see that as a problem at the dealership end. The customer in tier 2, 3 town, you can feel that they want to really see what is happening. So if you can put a live telecast of the work which is happening on the car, we have started with one bay in our workshops where if we can really showcase to the customer that what is happening. So I think that's what he needs, and I think that can to some extent take away that need to be available in the dealership to be there. The second thing probably I feel the overall ecosystem of pick and drop is much better in metro towns because there are so many third-party companies which are helping you in pick and drop, whereas tier 2 and 3, it is there, but it is not evolved to that extent. So I think that could also be the reason. I think as the pick and drop will go up, because once customer come to drop it, you need a car to drop him back and then pick him back or drop the car, which is, I think, not as cost effective. So I think you really need to work on that aspect to make sure that customer is not sitting there wherein you have to, of course, when customer is there, then he also expects that you will provide him with lunch when he is available, and that keeps on adding to your overall cost because he's there. If he's there for 3 hours, you have to offer him tea 2 times, a lunch once, and that is adding to your cost. So, and if you are a little bit, you falter in providing that service to him, he's not going to give you a good rating, even if his car is very good. So you have 2 elements to handle there, the car and the individual. Whereas in metros, it is just the car that is what you need to handle.
Yeah, and you want to add something in this?
No, I agree.
Because you handle 3 different, 2 mass products and 1 premium and a lot of other premium also. But
maybe one point to add is when you run networks, then you have to make sure that you have similar processes again. Yeah, we are at that one process fits all. No, it does not. But you have at these various touch points. We have for the Volkswagen Group brands, we have roughly 450 touch points in the country, and you have to ensure that the same standard that is important for the customer and for the brand is ensured at each and every of these 450 touch points. That is slightly more difficult to ensure than to have a quality assurance done at the factory at checkpoint 8. Yeah? However, this is always the sort of metric that you have to keep in mind. I do agree with that we have to do more about that we have to do, or that we have to drop our pens more in a way that the customer comes to us because he wants to come to us and not because he's forced to come to us, right? How to do that? There are a couple of ways. I mean, Tesla does that with these over-the-air updates when it comes to software. Yes, we have been doing that as well in case of the premium brands who run software over-the-air features. And where it is not possible, again, we have to treat the customers as it would be our brother, simply as human beings, and you have to explain to them what the expected cost will be. You have to then show him what you said, the transparent, the glass wall between the reception and then the workshop where the customer potentially could be following up the repair costs. They're not trusting us anyways. So that makes sense to do. And then, lunch, breakfast, tea, coffee, the usual amenities that you would expect to see in all brands. Yeah, not only in premium brands, but that is nowadays something that everyone expects also for the non-premium brands. So that would be my take on it. And then, once again, keep the standards up, the CI/CD standards, that is important. We will be, for the Volkswagen Group brands, we will be also having different formats, which lower the cost for the dealer, because you can't have, the same standard in rural areas compared to infrastructure, is what I'm talking about, compared to metro. And then what we have been trying is the service mobile. We have been driving with technicians in a service mobile to tier 3 cities and have been offering this service to customers there too. So there is one service mobile for 1 full week at the main square in those tier 3 cities that has been showing some, not that big success as we have been hoping for, but at least some success. So that would be my take to that.
Mr. Nail, coming back to you, something personal, but okay. So we saw there was an issue whenever we are seeing on the product survey. So whichever products, obviously yours, are on long waiting periods, that is where the OEM has been rated less in product. And waitings and bookings. And then FADA Manish Rajsingania saying that we have 72 days inventory. And the message goes to the customer that the dealers have 72 days inventory, but there are products which are short supplied and bookings and dealers don't know when to deliver. How to enhance the customer journey in this mapping of product availability, product mix, because all of the OEMs as of today are really running, I'll say, launching at least 20 variants every time a new product comes in. 20 variants, 25 colors to automatic AMT and all that, petrol, diesel. There are some 100 lines of individual product line, if I talk about, how can a dealer manage that and then give a proper customer experience?
I think Vinkesh Bhai is giving all the hard questions for me these days. Listen, I can't solve the inventory problem to that extent. The waiting period of it, I mean, there's two elements to it. One obviously is the fact that if there's an appeal to the product, we like it, but we obviously have to plan for it. Short of increasing capacity, which we have been doing, there's really not much we can do. But the fundamental challenge we have is we want to give customer as much choice as possible, but we want to do it without increasing the complexity of the backend for both the dealer network as well as for ourselves, right? And it's a hard one to solve. It's not an easy one to crack to that extent. Some of the areas where we're working on is around catching some of the field inputs much earlier every month, and we use that as part of our production planning, right? I'll give you a couple of examples of what we're trying to do. And like I said, I don't think it's a problem which is solved. It's a problem which has been around for a long time. One is anytime we launch a new product now, even before we are opening bookings, we're starting something called Save the Cart or Save Your Preference. And there, we are giving them, the customer, a choice of deciding what variant they want, what color they want, transmission, everything to that extent. And this is before we even start the booking. And we are now giving, with Tar Rocks, for example, we are giving almost 6 weeks of Save Your Preference before we even open bookings. What it does is, of course, for the customer, he feels that he's able to proactively save all his choices, and when the day you open bookings, he's able to click and go through. But in the back end, what it does for us is we're able to work through our supply chain and produce much ahead of time exactly the variants that you want to get at. So that helps do some of that. But that's only at launch. Beyond that, what we need to do is, and which is part of what we're digitizing right now, is a monthly process, but we are able to get ground up, dealer by dealer, input in what variants is working and what is not working. And then we run through the process every cycle and come back. It's almost like a digital twin of the physical process we are running today. And we're using tools, globally available tools to do that. And as soon as we get enough baseline data put in, at least what the vendor is promising is he will be able to start to predict with seasonality and all of that stuff. We're not there yet, but eventually we'll get to that point. You look in some of the advanced markets that's already there, they are able to predict for seasonality, and they're able to predict for certain colors going up and certain regions starting to come out, right? Today, it's all in our heads. It's heuristics we run with, seasonality in Kerala, we know what will happen in Punjab. So we need to start to digitize some of those pieces.
So there's paucity of time, but one important question is left. I know it's a double whammy for dealers also. One of the main points which customer came up with a good test drive. And the problem is, am I just taking an example? Even if a dealer is selling one Carnival, he has to keep one test drive Carnival vehicle. And if he's selling 10 vehicles, he has to keep 2 of petrol, 2 of diesel, 1 manual, 1 automatic and all that. So in turn, it slowly leads to a dealer who becomes a taxi company, because selling 50, 60 vehicles and having 12 test drive vehicles which are to be replaced every 1 year, and some vehicles, no doubt, which are in demand, gives you profit or in break even. If they are not in demand and you have reduced prices after that year, it's a loss. Even when dealer knows that this is an important tool to sell vehicle, but this is a big cost and a stress on dealers. And still all the OEMs think about, so thanks to all of you, so many variants, so you would want at least one of each top models to be kept. Even if a place is a tier 3 town and it sells only manual, then too the OEM wants to keep the automatic version so that the customer should try and feel and then buy, upgrade themselves and all that. Do you feel there is some other, because we also accept this is it is needed. We need to give a test drive. Without test drive, a new product can't be accepted. But is there any via media where this can be solved without putting in so much cost on the dealer and even getting the customer experience done? This question is to all three of you, one by one, please.
Okay. So firstly, I think we need to provide what customer wants, right? If you have 3 transmissions, you have a naturally aspirated petrol engine, then you have a turbo engine, then you have a diesel engine. the customer wants to experience the car which he wants to drive, right? If you give him a NA engine and you tell him, no, I don't have NA, can you drive turbo? He says, I want to experience that. So I think the customer requirement is to drive the car that he wants to buy. That is period, right? So we cannot do anything about not keeping that. Now let's try to see how do we solve for it. The first thing is there is a huge amount of working capital which gets, not working capital, or capital which gets blocked because you are buying it upfront. The solution for that is, I think there are a lot of finance companies or leasing companies which provide lease on the test drive car. I would recommend rather than blocking your capital, go for the leasing option because your outflows are much lower when you go for because most of the dealers, they take test drive through the working capital. Now, your X part of your working capital is always blocked. That means you can't rotate your funds and eventually, somewhere you get jammed, especially in a period like festival when you are on one side, you are taking ad hoc limits. On the other side, you have your working capital blocked because of the test drive cars. So you need to look at alternate options like leasing. For the high ticket items, I would recommend, for example, we are launching this EV9, which is 1 crore plus. We are looking at option how it can be divided between multiple dealers because you don't have so many test drive cars. For example, Carnival, we can look at that. But then we check with the dealers, you want to take car or you want to go for a pool kind of a system where you keep one Carnival in smaller towns and then you can keep on taking by turn and keep giving test drives. So that is solution number 2 that I can think of. There was another point which I'm forgetting. Probably I'll come back after we listen to our co-panelists.
Thank you, Hardeep. I'm just going to pick up on your second point, Hardeep, you mentioned. I do think infrastructure sharing, and I'm using this phrase loosely, is an interesting one. Vikesh, you mentioned the word taxi company. You don't want to be a taxi company. And in the past, I have asked some of our DPs to think about this. There's no harm in talking to taxi companies to actually manage the fleet for you. You could have an Uber, because they anyway have the platform, they have the app in front of them, right? If there is a way you can start to think about it, it could be a tripartite conversation with an Uber or Ola or any of these other platforms. And you don't even have to go to a large-scale platform. There are smaller platforms who can do it for us as well. I think it's probably time for us to have to think about how to share that infrastructure. I think we are very open to it. I think that's a conversation we need to have.
You want to add something?
Well, leasing, right? That is one option. The other one is sharing fleets of demo cars among dealers. And then maybe a third option is if dealers are strong enough and want to create their own company, their own rental car company for these purposes, that would also work as another thought. But to add to the dilemma of the dealers, we are now adding, and you mentioned EV9, yeah? EV9 was mentioned. We as well, we will be launching, or we have launched the BEVs, the battery electric vehicles. That is another level of complexity, that you not only then have BEVs, normally aspirated cars, you have turbo cars, you have all these different powertrains, but that then is adding another level of complexity and cost, once again, associated with it. The answer to that is only synergies, and the answer to that is only to run that test car or the test drive business as efficient as somehow possible. How to do that? Yeah, KPIs and measure it. That would be my answer. And by the way, we are talking about BEVs, right? That was also mentioned with the minister before. When we do not start to promote BEVs more, and when dealers do not start to install also charging stations together with the manufacturers, obviously, then we will be losing, some of the developments that are very important. Because when the BEVs, what the government says is by 2030 they want to have 30% of the vehicle fleet of the sold cars to be BEV vehicles. BEV vehicles will have a significant impact on after-sales revenue. What we see so far is that our BEV cars do generate 40% less service revenue than our ICE cars. And that obviously is also to be prepared. And we have to, as manufacturers, we have to prepare the network, the dealers accordingly. Yeah? So test drives, leasing, synergies, and maybe one of the dealers also think about founding a rental car company. And then, in my mind, we also have to be prepared when it comes to BEVs.
Yeah. So I think you spoke about the profitability. I think at the end of it, irrespective of what cost you have, whether you have high interest costs or high discounts or high demo costs, the bottom line is the profitability is the key, right? Despite having all the challenges, if you're profitable, good, right? But if these are causing pain and causing negative or losses, then it's a problem. But coming to standalone test drive cars, for example, in our case, we give 20% discount on a test drive car, and our replacement timeline is 1 year. And we know our RV at the end of 1 year is less than 20%. So eventually, you do not lose money on a test drive car. So that is point number one. You need to see, are you losing money on the test drive car? In that case, I think OEM should come forward and help so that you don't lose money on your test drive car. But if you're losing, the second thing is, are you overall profitable? If you are, then fine. Plus, minuses do happen. The second thing you need to look at, we did a recent check, the demo car cost as a percentage of your turnover is 0.2%. Right? If it is anything more than that, now 0.2% on, of course, we count every points when we come to profitability. Your interest cost is 1 to 1.5%. Your manpower cost is 3% of your turnover. If you look at your expenses, they are about, if your top line, of course, it varies from OEM to OEM. It anywhere varies from 12 to 13%. Your gross margins from all of them. Your expenses, they vary from anywhere between 10 to 12%. So you make anywhere between 1 to 3% as your net margin. Out of that, your demo car cost, if you go back and look at your balance sheets, it is not more than 0.2% of your turnover, which is very, very low. You have bigger issues to solve in your balance sheet than the demo car, because how much will you save? 0.2 will become 0.1. I think you should attack your overheads. Overheads I've seen in many dealerships varies from 2 to 3%. In some cases, it is even higher than that. I think those are the elements that you need to attack. You need to see where you can really save money, because this is not going to make much difference. 0.2, 0.3, 0.1, that's it. So
I wasn't going to that way because I know Sharvik in the second session has to cover this topic. So I was just taking myself. So thank you, everybody. Thanks. It's a real good discussion. I hope the dealers would have liked it. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gulati, for moderating this wonderful session. And I'm sure amongst all of you also, there were a lot of questions that were answered in this engaging conversation. So let's felicitate our panelists for this session. And can I just request for you all to bring the mementos? Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, giving a token of thanks to Mr. Narayanan first. Can we please have a round of applause? Mr. Pradeep Agarwal, can I please request you to come up and felicitate Mr. Golagunta? Sir, please. In case we, yeah, all right. Mr. Vinkesh Gulati doing the honors there. Ms. Garima Mishra, can I please request you, ma'am? Okay, she's also not here. So, Mr. Gulati, I think I will just request you only to felicitate Mr. Bures as well. Please bring the mementos. Mr. Govind Mewar, are you with us in the audience? Sir, please join us. Thank you so much. I'm going to request Mr. Govind Mewar to felicitate Mr. H.S. Barar. Mr. Bharat Chodia, sir, are you there with us? Okay, I think Mr. Gulati, please, please stay with us, because I'm going to request Mr. Govind Barar to felicitate Mr. Gulati. Or Mr. Chodia is here? Okay, sorry for not having spotted you earlier. Token of thanks to Mr. Gulati as well. Perfect. A round of applause for our moderator, please. It was a fantastic session. And as we request all our panelists and our moderator to please stand up for a group photo. From the FNS team, I'm also going to invite Ms. Priya and Mr. Siddharth to join us for the group photograph. If you are there in the audience, please come up and join us here. Right, let's go ahead with the photograph then. Yes, they are here. So this was a wonderful session, a CxO Fireside Chat on Customer Experience Index Study 2024. And with that, we also wrap up the first discussion that we had arranged for you this afternoon.